and we will start with a poetry session. And our first poet today is one of the finest young poets of Peterborough, of the UK, I would say, someone we proudly call one of our own. Zain Awan is a multi-award winning poet and a creative whose work spans theatre, screen, and spoken word, with performances across Pakistan, North America, and beyond. He holds a joint honors degree in development economics and Middle Eastern studies from SOAS and is currently on research sabbatical for an MPhil in South Asian studies at Cambridge. Please welcome Zain with a loud salam.
I wanted to seek the peaks of your love, and you guided me to your home. Said, pray, bless your head upon the chest of my earth as your forehead touches dust. Recall I made you from this earth, and entwined in your body the breath of mine, an echo of the divine, but I still could not find how my eyes could set eyes upon yours. For you are not captured by sight nor verse, not to be ridden upon the saddles of camels or the backs of a horse. You are infinite, and I merely a dust in a speck of nothingness. The spectacle is such, the paradox which cannot by men be understood. So you sent forth your own manifestations as divine ordinance and direction, as reminders and signs of your love, and said, read of my names and understand of my love. And you ask, do you not uncover my signs? Do you not read and recall my breath divine? Do you not hold your head and hold your hand to your chest and feel the beat of your heart? Do you not see my divine creation is my divine art? But when I wanted to know how to see you, for the eyes of mine could not capture the sight, nor the ignorance of my mind could understand your infinite time, nor could I read through your verses through a mind confined to understand your signs. I asked, what of those that could read and see, those who could with their blood in your path bleed? You ask once again, do you not see my signs and over them reflect? For I have to you my own signs sent, and amongst them there is one who is the oracle, the translator of the tongue of prophethood, who can see prophecies within his own two eyes, as though time before him is played, as Adam in his clay through his eyes. Too sees creation in my way, and he who in his love with my oneness, who in my unity recites a eulogy for his return to me. You prayed at the place you placed your head to the chest of this earth, but from the womb of the Abrahamic tomb I called my house, I birthed my greatest sign. He who would be the peaks of my verse, my poem unending. He was the start and the meaning, the hidden and the apparent. And when you asked, when can you hear of me? I said, hear of my lovers and those that are in love with me. See how they speak so effortlessly. See how their words raise so high. So I called them Ali. I will enshrine in time their words into the peaks of eloquence so mankind heard. Some called my sign the voice of human justice. Others could not comprehend how vividly he could recount my creation in its myopic form, or see the dystopia of men who left my side. But he was a mountain that could not move, and the mountain that could grit his teeth and firm his back, as revelation was revealed to prophethood and relayed to his chest, it was sealed. He was the one who could see opportunity as the cloud and clasp it with his two hands, and saw the rain as beauty, and saw the sun as mercy. And when they asked how he could see me so vividly from eyes that could never capture the divine, he turned again, unveiled his chest, and his ribs parted to show a heart of two eyes, a looking glass into the divine. He is eloquence personified in the form of man. He is justice defined in the form of his hands, that part dried bread that even my angels themselves crave the crumbs that fall under his earth. And he could tell you of Jesus if you so wished, as though he himself was present as he slept. He could tell you how to bear the wounds and the troubles of men, like a camel bears the grit of the desert in her eye and still pursues, who could wipe the spit of men from his face, to close his mortal eyes, again to open his eyes of his heart, and then do what a lover is always meant to do. Go in love, fight in my love, stand in my love, because to him the beloved is not a prayer, but it is the breath he releases and the air he inhales. He is present in the quivering of his ablution, in the sermons he spoke often, in his letters in confidence, and the questions he answered, or his intimate supplications that are his love poems, who fears not his Lord out of fear of hell, but the magnanimity he witnesses of the power of this intimacy not to be forsaken. Ask of him and he will be present. Find him and you will find the divine. Read of him and you will be presented with my signs, with the peaks of his eloquence. Uncover your chest, part your ribs, so that your heart that was blinded may be open to my majesty, may be open to Ali, so you can see through the eyes of my beloved, so you will be reminded of my signs and of his signs. And my names are the greatest, and of my greatest names he is the great one. To see through him once again, through the heart that you have often neglected, open it through Ali, to see into the looking glass of mine, to see once again into the looking glass of the divine.
Brothers and sisters, now we move on to our speeches session. As a reminder, there will be a Q&A session after every speech, so we'll open the floor for questions, so please have your questions ready. Without further ado, I will invite our first speaker, who definitely does not need any introduction. It is my absolute honor and privilege to welcome Hujjatul Islam, Sarmaya Millat-e Jafriya, Maulana Sayyid Ali Raza Rizvi Sahab, to the board.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة لأهل التقوى واليقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين بالقاسم محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين روح وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفدا واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله. First of all, Eid al-Ghadir Mubarak, the greatest Eid. And on this occasion, although I had other commitments, but I made sure that I was here in this conference for a few reasons. Number one, it is on Nahjul Balagha. Nahjul Balagha, to the Shia scholars, is the most important book of the Shia works after the Holy Quran. Now, let me just clarify this, that sometimes a book is very important, but the scholars do not refer to it. If the scholars do not give importance to a book or a work or a scholar, then that becomes unimportant. I hope you will understand. But Nahjul Balagha for the past 1,000 years has been the center of attention for the Shia scholars. And it is, although there are books written much bigger than Nahjul Balagha, but because the compiler, Sharif Radi or Sayyid Radi, is such a great scholar, such an important scholar, his brother also, Sayyid Murtada, that the scholars give great importance to Nahjul Balagha. Secondly, Many people try to create doubts about Nahjul Balagha's authenticity. So there are scholars who have compiled books just on the authenticity of Nahjul Balagha. The asnad, or the chains of reporters. Third, there has been work by Ayatollah Sadiq Musawi. He is the grandson of Ayatollah Marhum Sayyid Abdullah Shirazi. So his forefathers originally Iranian but based in Najaf. He migrated to Beirut in America. He speaks very good Urdu as well now. So he compiled Tamam Nahjul Balagha, meaning the completion of the whole of Nahjul Balagha. Because I know everyone is paying attention. The authenticity comes when Sayyid Radi says, this is a sermon. And then he doesn't have the parts which are in that sermon. And he says, wa minha, and a part of this sermon is this. This is how honest Sayyid Radi is, that when he doesn't have the full sermon, he doesn't just keep writing the whole sermon. He says, no, I've missed a part, but a part of this sermon is also this sermon. This is the most beautiful part of Sayyid Radi, his trustworthiness. He does not just say that it is a part of Al-Mu'min's speech, but he mentions it. None of these are here. I'm not sure if I'll be able to complete my presentation that Maulana had asked me to. So it's a very long presentation, unfortunately, and my time is short. I will begin. There are other parts. One last part I want to say about the authenticity of Nahjul Balagha. My sisters, my daughters, my brothers, my elders, my children, pay attention to this. This is by many Shia great scholars who have written on Nahjul Balagha. And this word I used to think is Imam Ali himself, but I have searched, I have not found it in Nahjul Balagha or other parts. Maulana probably will correct me. But people have associated it to Sayyid Sheikh Mirza Habibullah Khoi, one of the greatest commentators of Nahjul Balagha. His commentary in Arabic is called Nahjul Balagha. Kalamul Imami, Imamul Kalam. So the words of the Imam are the Imams of all the words. Did everyone follow? Just like the words of Allah, you can distinguish when you read that this is Kalamullah. And a Sunni writer who has written extensively, 20 volumes on Nahjul Balagha, Ibn Abil Hadith, Mu'tazili, is a Sunni writer, 700 years ago. He says that whenever you read Nahjul Balagha, you see that Kalamu Aliyin tahta Kalam al-Khaliq wa fawqa Kalam al-Bashar. That it is just below the words of Khaliq, the creator, and above the words of all the creation. So when you read Nahjul Balagha, you can see. In the past 3 years, I have spoken in Muharram in Karachi in one of my ashras on the letter of Amir al-Mu'mineen, which is usually called the covenant, the Ahdnama of Amir al-Mu'mineen to Hazrat Malik al-Ashtar, the most important companion of the Holy Prophet. Of Imam Ali ﷺ. He's a Tabi, but he is the closest man to Amir al-Mu'mineen. And just one sentence in his reference is sufficient. I have not seen a sentence by the Holy Prophet ﷺ or the Ahlebait about a non-ma'soom this great. That Amir al-Mu'mineen says, I visited him last year in Egypt. He's buried in Qahira, just outside Cairo. Amir al-Mu'mineen said, the commander of the faithful said, Kana li kama kuntu Rasulullah. When Malik ibn Haris al-Ashtar, Naqvi al-Ashtar passed away, who was Yemeni, he was appointed by Amir al-Mu'mineen as the commander or the governor of Wali of Egypt after Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr had been killed. She appointed him, and he said on his death, Kana li kama kuntu Rasulullah. Malik was to me like I was to the Holy Prophet. I have not seen any infallible, any Imam or any Prophet say something like this about a non-infallible. So this is the stature of Hazrat Malik al-Ashtar. Now, Maulana, who does Maulana Maqbul Hussain Alvi Sahab, had asked me to speak about the rights of the creation, especially the animals, and I have a speech on it, but today I'm not sure if I'll be able to conclusively complete this topic as much as I can. He is the founder of Islamic thought, and this on its own is sufficient for Brother Awan, Shabir Awan, and all the people who are serving in Islamic thought, that your shafaat is guaranteed if you serve Amirul Mu'mineen. So anyone who serves Nahjul Balagha serves Amirul Mu'mineen. Now, there are many parts in Nahjul Balagha, so Amirul Mu'mineen throughout Nahjul Balagha. I'll very quickly touch upon a few. Now, many times, ibadat or the rights, people, when they talk about them, they try and convey that it is dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is the ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the salat and the sawm. We have many, many traditions from the Ahlebait in Islam, where that you have forsaken your duty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you have forsaken your duty to the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Man lam yashkur al-makhluq lam yashkur al-khaliq. Anyone who does not thank the creation of Allah has not thanked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So many times people come and say, oh, you haven't taught me. You're only the means, Allah taught me through you. That's not what Allah wants. He wants you to appreciate every person in your life. So, but the beauty of Nahjul Balagha, everyone, on this slide, I want to not talk for too long, is that Amirul Mu'mineen, sometimes we only say rights of parents, rights of teachers, rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He makes it a two-way thing. He says rights of children and rights of parents. Did you all? So rights of creation and rights of the... Which leader today, which politician today would stand up and say, your rights upon my shoulders are such and such? The greatest, the commander of the faithful, who the Holy Prophet say, amongst all the titles of Amirul Mu'mineen, he has, just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has 99 names, the Holy Prophet has 99 names, Amirul Mu'mineen also has 99 titles. And our scholars argue that the greatest title of Maulana Ali al-Islam is Amirul Mu'mineen, commander of the faithful, meaning he is the commander of all the faithful from Hazrat Adam till the day of judgment. Meaning, when you command, meaning you're the best in all of those attributes. For him to say, I have a few rights on you, and I have 3 rights on you, and you have 3 rights on me. I'm not going to go into that, but look at the beauty of this statement of Amirul Mu'mineen, where he gives so much respect to his followers that he says, you have rights over my shoulders. Your right is that I guide you. Look at the beauty of his stature. Can we go to the next slide? Now, this is a very famous sentence of Amirul Mu'mineen Islam, again mentioned in his letter to Hazrat Malik Ashtar, An-Nasu Sinfan. People are of 2 types, Inna akhul laka fid din or Nazirun laka fil khalq. They're either your brothers in faith or they're your equals in creation. I could go on and on because I've read 3 ashras, 3 years continuously, last 3 years, on the letter of Amirul Mu'mineen to Hazrat Malik Ashtar. But one thing I really loved, this is my 5th term in Majlis presidency, but this has helped me. A few sentences that have helped me throughout serving the community. Number 1, he says that, O Malik, for Ra'iyyat, for your subordinates, if you can't give them anything, if you don't have anything to give them, for example, you don't have enough wealth to distribute amongst the people, welfare, you can't do anything, just give them love. The Ri'ayah, the subordinates, even will be pleased with the love that you distribute amongst them. Look at the beauty of the character of Amirul Mu'mineen. One other sentence in Nahjul Balagha, from the day 1, before my presidency, it has helped me throughout. The key, let me translate it, Nahjul Balagha is very beautiful, and my English is not so good, so I'm trying to translate it nicely into English. So he says, Alatul Ri'asa, the key, the tool or the key, Alatul Ri'asa, Sa'atul Sadr. The key to leadership is having a broad chest, meaning having patience. Sa'atul Sadr. This is the key of leadership. So he says that you have to have patience. Never be quick to judge your subordinates and the people that are living in your government or amongst you. So never judge people. Very quickly, because I've got, I think, 20 slides. I'm only on the 3rd one at the moment, or 2nd one. Have I gone? Okay. So the examples of rights of parents, and for example, he says, respect your father, don't walk in front of him, don't call him by his name. Yes? Don't call him, hey, Ali. No, call him with respect. And then he says, the rights of children. And you Hasan Isma, the father must give a good name to the child. And you Allama must teach him Quran. And you Adabahu must teach him good manners. So he doesn't just say one way. Amir Mu'minin Islam's methodology in Nahjul Balagha is that it is a two-way thing. Never talk about just rights but responsibilities. So it is rights and responsibilities. Next slide, please. Now, the central, there is one of the greatest commentators on Nahjul Balagha. Have you heard of Allama Muhammad Taqi Ja'fari? Anyone? Anyone? Okay, few of you. He was an Iranian, died in 1998. He wrote 27 volumes as a commentary of Nahjul Balagha, and he hadn't even completed half of Nahjul Balagha. And he passed away. So a lot of the people read his commentary and say, I don't understand. So you need two things to understand his commentary. Sociology. Number one, sociology. Number two, anthropology. Some say also philosophy. What's his theory? Let me just very quickly. So he says that Amir Mu'minin in a society said these sermons. You have to understand the society and the sociology of that society to understand the words of Amir Mu'minin. So he's saying it to the people of Kufa, to Medina. So whenever you need to understand the context, the people, when he's coming back from a battle, when is he saying those words? The context is very important. Does that make sense? Do I need to explain it further, or can I go on to the next part? Okay, so Bismillah means I can go on to the next part. Now, the central theme of Nahjul Balagha is justice, is adalat. Amir Mu'minin says that Allah has sent all of these prophets, Quran, and everything. The central point is adl and adalat, justice. So, for example, Christianity says the central point is love. Everyone paying attention? So, every religion has some sort of motto. And Amir Mu'minin says that Islam and Quran came for establishing social justice. Everyone should be adil. Allah is adil, the Prophet is adil, the Imam is adil, the judge has to be adil, the person leading the prayer has to be adil, the person who has to bear witness in the court has to be adil. Everyone has to be adil. And when you're adil, when you're fair, for example, when your children say, you're not being fair to me. Yes? So they're saying you're not being adil. Literally. So what they mean is that be fair to me. Yes? If you're fair, for example, you will say that this is my mother, so she has her own rights, my wife has her own rights, my sister, my daughter. So you will fulfill the rights of every individual in their own capacity. You will not forsake the rights of any individual to give the rights to the others. Does that make sense? Am I talking too fast? Tough luck. Sorry, I do speak fast, but if I know the time is short, then I'll be speaking faster than normal. So the whole concept, the central point of Nahjul Balagha is adil. Imam Ali Islam wants every single Shia of his to be adil. And once you're adil, then you will see the environment has rights on me, the animals. When I go on, inshallah, you will see. The next part. For example, in Nahjul Balagha, Amir Mu'minin, his companions used to say that we wish we were orphans. The love and respect Amir Mu'minin showed to the poor and orphans. His own companions used to say that we wish we were orphans. Because the things Maulana Ali did not even eat himself, he would feed to the orphans. The things that he did not wear himself. Why do you think Qamba? I've done some research on this. Probably the scholars will, I'm not sure if they've heard it or not. It is a book, Al-Mawsu'at al-Kubra and Fatima al-Zahra, 25 volumes by Khuwaini Ansari. In volume number 18, page number 236, if I'm not mistaken. He mentions from Taqiyuddin Khunsari that Hazrat Qambar radiyallahu anhu and Hazrat Fizza radiyallahu anha, they were brother and sister, and they were not slaves. They were prince and princess of Abyssinia, Ethiopia. They were children of the king. Have you seen the African people are usually tall and strong, strong built? You haven't seen anyone, so I'm the only person. I don't like to just speak. I like people to engage. So, African people are usually generally strong and tall and big. Hazrat Qamar was a very tall man, a very strong man. He heard there is a man in Medina called Muhammad. He claims that he's a messenger. And he has a brother who fights all the tyrants and he kills them, called Ali. So he said, I'm going to go and kill him. His sister says, I want to see you fight this lion, Ali. I want to see how you kill him. They both came. Hazrat Akbar, when he first saw Ali ibn Abi Talib, he said, you are my master. And Imam Ali said, if you accept that you are my slave, I free you. He said, but I've decided never to leave you. And the rest of his life he spent with Imam Ali alayhi salam. Why? What was so beautiful about the character of Ali ibn Abi Talib that Hazrat Akbar never left him? Even after his death, every single day Hazrat Akbar would cry for Amir al-Mu'mineen. And he's buried in Baghdad. He said, never ever he treated me like an African or, like the race. Sometimes you're racist towards Africans because he's black. He said, never he was racist. He never said to me, he's my slave. He would always say, he's my son. He treated me very, So the rights of the society, and even your servants, don't overburden them. Your animals, don't, all of those are mentioned in Nahjul Balagha. Can I go on to the next part very quickly? I will only give one example for some of these things. So Amir Mu'min says, for example, fear the rights of the orphans. And then he says that, why? So don't do ihsan, like for example, don't make them feel that as if they are low and you are from the top giving them something. They should feel that you give a smile and give them respect. Now, Amir Mu'min throughout his life has shown kindness. Now, can I go on to the next slide very quickly because, I'm not even halfway through yet. Now, there are many examples of this in Nahjul Balagha and in our real life. What comes first? Usually, Amir Mu'minin in Nahjul Balagha, there is a whole sermon where he says that people think, what comes first? Wealth. Everyone paying attention? So wealth comes first, then comes family and friends, and then comes ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So usually people would give their life for wealth, even their own life and health, they will destroy. No, I need to work, I need to earn. Should be the other way around. Yeah, I hope you will follow. Yes? Unfortunately, what happens is it's not, real life is that wealth is more important. But he says, no, that's the last thing. The first thing is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The ibadat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then come your family and friends, and then comes wealth. But usually it is the other way around. So he says that what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala require of you? What does he want from you? First of all, he wants mercy. In Quran you mention the word mercy, Rahman, Rahim, Rahma a lot. So he says, be merciful to all. Not only just your family, to all. Be kind to everyone. So kindness is the key. After justice, kindness is the key that Amir Mu'minin wants. We're living in an age where, even sometimes in one of my khutbahs, Jummah khutbahs, unfortunately I've now been, people have made it, I have had to complain to the police that, some country, some agency took my part and, made it big, But in my Jummah khutbah I had said that I apologize that in my previous khutbah I compared to one president and one prime minister, without mentioning the countries. Inshallah, you're all intelligent people. I'll now be more careful because I have named so many people. So one president and one prime minister I named, and I said, they're like wolves and they're like animals. And thus, following khutbah I had to apologize and say, sorry, I compared it to wolves, because I'm fearing now on the day of judgment the wolves will hold me by my collar and say, how dare you compare us to these kind of people? Which wolf have you seen that kills 20,000 children? If they want to eat one, they will only kill one. So, but the central point, so I'm against wars, I'm against all wars between Muslims, non-Muslims, and Hindus against Sikhs, and Hindus against Christians, all wars, I'm against it. Amir Mu'minin, his central point. Kindness. Even in the battlefield, he would say, I invite you to Islam. And then to his enemy, he would say, okay, if you don't want to become a Muslim, then go back. Because you don't know who I am, I'll kill you. You see, look at the beauty. Even before he wants to kill someone, he says, go back. This is, the central point of after justice is kindness. Be kind. Now, kindness does not just mean words. The biggest kindness, the biggest sadaqah is a smile. Yes, everyone? Yes. So smile. You know, even on the phone, someone cannot see you, and you say hello. They know you're in a good mood. And you say hello. They know he's been fighting with someone, his mood's off. It has an impact. Wallah, today psychology has proven it. Back in the day, the Holy Prophet and Amir al-Mu'mineen emphasized that a smile. The Holy Prophet, Kana Rasulullah Daiman Yatabassam. Amir al-Mu'mineen describing the Holy Prophet. One of the key central points of Nahjul Balagha is that Amir al-Mu'mineen always give examples from the life of the Holy Prophet. And there are scholars who say that if you look at the life of the Holy Prophet from the words of Amir al-Mu'mineen, you know, the way he describes him, that whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala split his ancestors, you know, like his lineage into half, the greatest were the fathers and the forefathers of the Holy Prophet. You know, so next one quickly. Neighbors. So your neighbors, Nahjul Balagha throughout, even in his will, in his final will, Amir al-Mu'mineen has a will about the neighbors. You know, just like the Holy Prophet, he emphasized a lot about neighbors. Now, one of the things that I want to very quickly say, when mu'mineen and, you know, people fight each other, when there are disputes, in the final will of Amir al-Mu'mineen, he says to Imam Hasan he says, إِنِّي سَمِعْتُ جَدَّكُمْ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ فِي غَيْرِ مَوْضِعٍ. This is the key point. I've heard your grandfather Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say this in more than one place. Meaning he repeated this hadith. Islahu dhatil bayn. Yes? So in his final words, he says, you know, have piety of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, have taqwa, you know, all of those things. And he says, Islahu dhatil bayn. When two mu'mineen fight, don't just stand up and watch and months, years go by and people don't talk to each other. Go and make friendship between them. Why? He says, I heard your grandfather Rasulullah say that Islahu dhatil bayn afdal min ammati siyam wa sawmi wa sadaqa. That rectifying the relationship between two mu'mineen is greater than common fasting, prayers and sadaqah. Can you imagine? Can you all imagine? Look at the word. So social rights and social justice is a key. Can I quickly go on to the... Okay. Now, so the leader usually, you know, wants to be served. There are two models in the world today. Can I quickly talk about leadership models? They are heavy. There are two models. If you're all watching my hands, so there is a pyramid, like a mountain shape, yes? This shape, this model of leadership. This is called the American model of leadership. So the leader at the top gives the most pressure to the people below him. And they give more pressure to the people below, and they give to... Did you all follow? Yes. So the leader is the one who gives the most pressure. And then there is the Japanese model, which is the other way around. Did everyone? Yes? Not like the mountain, but the other way around. So they say the leader is the one who takes the most pressure. Did you all follow? Nahjul Balagha, he talks about the rights of the leaders and the rights of the people. So he says, don't ever order. Serve the people before you ask them to serve you. So the whole protect their rights, you know, so everything is from the leader to the people, and then expect the similar things back for you. Don't expect, unlike the current Muslim politicians, without naming any country. MashaAllah, you know, we have about 56, 57 Muslim majority countries. But it is the American model that they're following. I am the leader, I am the prime minister, I am the president. So they deserve everything and the people deserve nothing. So that's the model which Islam does not approve. That's not the model of the Holy Prophet ﷺ or the model of Nahjul Balagha or Amir al-Mu'mineen al-Islam. Can I quickly go on to the next one? Okay, so now I've come towards the end, but now I've got about quite a few slides still left. Animals. So there is in Usul al-Kafi, there is a whole long chapter where he says that even, you know, amongst dogs, they have 10 attributes that if human beings had them, they would be the best of mu'mineen. They are extremely faithful. Yes? When they become crazy, they leave the house, so they don't give the disease to their masters or their children. And if they have zuhud. Zuhud, everyone understands? Asceticism. So zuhud is, for example, you have little, but you don't complain. So he said, the master gives a very little to the dog, but it never goes to another person and says, my master didn't feed me enough, can you give me something? He said, so all of those qualities. But he says, the best quality I like about dogs is, no matter how much the master beats the dog. Yes? So, for example, you've trained a dog and don't eat the chicken, but it eats one of the chickens or something like that. So none of you know anything. I'm the only sinful person who knows about dogs. So, you can train dogs. And they are, so it is allowed to have dogs if they are, for guards, shepherds, hunting. So he says the best quality I like about dogs is that when the master beats the dog and sits him down in a corner, no matter how much the master beats him, he still waits, when will he call me? Did you all follow? He doesn't complain. Wait, 2 hours ago you battered me up. You broke my ribs or you broke my leg and I'm now sitting in the corner. No, he waits for the master and runs. Oh, he's called me back. He says, no matter how many trials Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends to you, be prepared to say, labbaik. So the central point is that, even the animals have rights to women. And then in some parts, in one of the sermons, he says, can I quickly go on to the next one? So they're all aman of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He says about the little birds, sparrows, they at Subh Sadiq, early morning at Fajr time, they start making noise, they're doing tasbih. He says, this is what I love about birds. At night, a storm comes and destroys their nest. They're made of straw. Destroys their nest, and straight at Fajr, they don't complain, Ya Allah, you broke our houses last night. They get up and start with the tasbih of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the most difficult of times, they still praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Can I quickly go on to the next part, please? Inshallah, you'll probably, read these things in your own time later on. Now, people who think that they are better than others or they are above others, what is the key, what is the central point that makes them so arrogant? Self-ego, self-centeredness, yes? Hubbun nafs, yes? Self-love, self-admiration is probably the correct translation. Some people are full of themselves. Oh, I'm so great. Marhum, one of my teachers, used to always say, we have husn zan about ourselves and we think, I'm the most learned, I'm the best person, I'm the most bataqwa. When you think about others, he said, well, he's got nowhere near me. This is what the human ideology is. You think, I am the best. So he has rejected that whole point. So why do I deserve everything? Because I'm the best. So I deserve, on the dinner table, I deserve the food first, I deserve respect. And anyway, go on to the next one. This one has made everyone quiet. Now, what is the moral that Amir Mu'minin Islam has given? Each one I wanted to talk about in detail, each slide, and I could, go on and on, but so, Amir Mu'minin Islam, you all hear that he fed the poor. And he would cover his face at night, and he would carry the bread and the loaf on his back, which left marks on him for years. Sirran wa alaniyatan. The Holy Quran gives a concept. Hidden and apparent. You hide and you give cover, and then you make it apparent to everyone that I'm giving in the way of Allah. Why? So others also follow. They say the best example of that, the riwayat is from Hazrat Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu, that the Holy Prophet said, there is only one man that has fully practiced this ayat. Day, night, hidden and apparent, it is my brother Ali ibn Abi Talib. He's the best example of giving in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, hidden and in every way possible. Whatever he had, he would feed others. So that is the central point of his life. He said, never call an orphan that they are fatherless, or widows, they have no one. Usually people oppress the people who have no one. I took a pause. Let it sing. Yes? Oh, she has no one, I can oppress her. We can take her house, we can throw her out, we can take her land. When the government doesn't protect your rights, Amirul Mu'mineen said, never ever oppress the people who have no one but Allah. Because Allah is the greatest. He will take revenge before you know it. You know, sometimes people come to you, I'm not sure, probably they, like, we don't have confession, but unfortunately, people come and confess, well, I did so many sins, nothing happened. I did a little sin and, so much happened in my life. What little sin did you do? And then you realize that, oh, you think it is a little sin. But in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you think the orphan or the widow or someone who is weak, Allah is on their side. And then you realize that I have to now pay for it. So, the central point in his life, he always stood. I wanted to say a story, but the time is finished now. I think just quickly go through the slides. There are references at the end. I will now stop because and then I'll take questions. Can I just quickly just say a story? Can I? He heard a lady in the streets of Kufa calling her son. And so this is not the story is not on this slide, so you can just. So he saw a lady and she's calling her son, Matad Dain. The loan died. Everyone understand? So he stopped her and said, why have you named your son Matad Dain? The loan has died, dead loan. She named her son dead loan. So the loan has died, is dead. She said, oh, my husband went on tijara with 3 friends and they came back. My husband had died in an accident in that travel. And they told me that my husband made a will that I'm soon to have a child. Tell my wife to name my son. The loan is dead. She said, do you know the 3 men who were the friends of your husband who went on tijara? She said, yes, they live in Kufa. He said, please point them to these men. Bring them into Masjid al-Kufa. He brought them into Masjid al-Kufa and he said, tie them up with the distance. Masjid al-Kufa is big. Have you seen Masjid al-Kufa? They say 80% of it is still the original Masjid al-Kufa. He said, tie them to the pillars of Masjid al-Kufa in the courtyard with the distance, not too close. And he said, when I ask questions, all of you just make a lot of noise and say, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. The others don't know what I've said, so you start saying Allah. They said, okay, fine. So he went to the first one. He said, tell me the truth about that man who died on that trip. And the other started saying, all the people around him said, Allahu Akbar. So he went to the second one and said, Ya Ali, he's lying. It was him who killed him. Did you all follow? So he said, it wasn't me. It was his plan. He killed him. So the people started saying, Allahu Akbar. Went to the third. He said, both of them are lying. It was their plan. They put the poison. They pushed. So then he went to the first one again. And then he said, similar thing happened to Nabi Dawud alayhi salam. And he said, give all the money back to this lady. The money came back and he said, now name him Ashad Dain. The loan still lives. Look at the wisdom, the kindness. Who today stands up for the rights of weak? Weak, no one stands up for. Strong men, everyone stands up for. Widow, orphans, Raza. It is the central point of Nahjul Balagha to always remember the weak. Why? Because Allah is on the side of Mazloom. The oppressed are sided with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If there are any questions, I'll answer them. We have 5 minutes for questions. Sorry I could not complete the presentation. Questions from brothers or sisters? Any questions? There is a question at the back. Allah Muhammad wa ala Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Question? Mike. Alaykum assalam.
Question is about Nahjul Balagha. How many volumes are there in Nahjul Balagha and how can we do public of Nahjul Balagha?
Okay.
The vast population.
Okay. Nahjul Balagha is only 1 volume and it has 3 parts. Sermons, the sermons of Amir Mu'minin Islam, khutbah. Second are the letters, Rasail. Rasail is, the letters he wrote to different dignitaries on different individuals, his own subordinates, his sons, Hazrat Malik Ashtar. Other rulers, his enemies, those letters are there. So sermons, 242 or 241. And then you have letters, 79 letters, and then you have short sayings, kalimatul qisar. Short sayings of Islam, some are not so short, like one sentence letter. A lot of the people start Nahjul Balagha from the beginning. I would urge you to start from the third part, which is easier to understand, very eloquent. Some of the khutbahs are very deep about tawheed, about creation, about everything. So third part. And the more tabligh video of Nahjul Balagha, give people 100 maxims, 40 hadiths, or 100 from the last part. Anyone who reads them, I had a friend in Birmingham who went to college with me this is early 90s. That's how old I am. So he converted, he became a Muslim. And you know what converted him? He said there was a brother who was distributing 100 maxims of Ali ibn Abi Talib. He said, I read those 100 short sayings of Ali, and I started telling everyone, Ali says this, Ali says this, Ali. And he said, whenever I would go anywhere, everyone would say, Ali is coming, he's going to tell us about Ali ibn Abi Talib. And then he said to the guy who gave him those 100 maxims, I want to learn more about Ali ibn Abi Talib. So the guy brought him to Maulana in Birmingham, Maulana Naqvi. So he said, what if I told you that Ali ibn Abi Talib died 100 years ago? He said, but that's impossible. Someone 100 years ago could not have known the things that Ali knows. He said, what if I told you he died 200 years ago? The guy went quiet. He said, what if I told you he died 500 years ago? He said, this was a cousin of the Holy Prophet, he died 14 centuries back. He said, that one sentence moved me, and then I converted.
Jazakallah khair, Maulana Sahib, for this very insightful and thought-provoking speech. May Allah Pak reward you immensely for your efforts, inshallah. Brothers and sisters, now we will move on to our second speech of the day. Our second speaker today, he hails from a well-known religious family of Peterborough, one of our own. Sheikh Mohammed Ismail, after completing a law degree in the UK, he went to Qom and spent 10 years at Hawza, specializing in Quran and Hadith. He has taught in Qom, Damascus, and in the UK, helped establish the World Federation's Qom Education Office, and served as a senior lecturer at the Islamic College, where he previously led Hawza and Quranic and Arabic programs, and also directed research and publications. He holds a doctorate from Middlesex University, and his publications include an annotated translation of Tawzihul Masail and several textbooks and articles. It is my honor to invite Sheikh Dr. Mohammed Ismail to address us on the topic, A Path to Spiritual Clarity. Please welcome Sheikh with a loud salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين. Respected scholars, my elders, brothers, sisters, children, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. A very warm Eid Mubarak to you all. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today, and I'd like to thank the organizers, especially Maulana Hussain Alami, for inviting me to share some reflections on this wonderful, profound work, Nahjul Balagha. As we heard just a few moments ago, it's a book that has been described as being the speech which is above that of creation, but speech which is below that of the Creator. And inshallah, I would like to focus my presentation today on letter 31 of Nahjul Balagha. And the three themes that I'd like to go through in terms of this letter are seeing, being, and doing. And we'll see how this very deeply and very moving and spiritually illuminating work of Nahjul Balagha takes us through this journey, in particular with regards to our spiritual development. Now, I'd like to start off by just giving some context about this wonderful letter 31. As we heard just a few moments ago, context is so important. In fact, there's a saying, a text without context is a pretext. That's how important context is. So the context of this letter is that Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Ali alayhi salam, was coming back from Siffin. There he writes this letter. Now the letter is addressed most likely to his son, Imam al-Hasan, salawatullah wa salamu alayhi. But of course, over the centuries, it's a letter that has been read by so many Muslims as inspiration and guidance for them. So it's not purely a letter to one person, it's a letter for us all. And it's a very beautiful and one of the longest letters in the Nahjul Balagha. Out of about 79 letters, this is perhaps the second longest letter. And it's not just a list of rules, it's actually a journey of the soul. It portrays how a person can move from spiritual darkness to illumination. And it does this in those three ways, by explaining the seeing concept of spiritual life, the being concept of it, and the doing aspect of it. So to get a better idea of how these three themes work in this letter, picture, just for a moment, a person who's on a journey. This person is going down a path, it's totally dark right now, and he's struggling to see where he's going to go. He doesn't know where the pitfalls are. He can't tell which way to go, turn left, right, or even if he's going in the right direction. Then a lamp is lit. This person now sees the path. This is the seeing aspect of this letter. Now that he sees the path, he's able to follow it. At least he knows now where to go, which direction to turn, and the potential obstacles to avoid. As he carries on going down this path, the light gets brighter and brighter. Because he's following this path of spiritual development, the light gets stronger. Now there comes a point where the light is no longer external. The light becomes internal. That person becomes the light. And now that he becomes the light, it then manifests the person's whole being into action. This is the doing part. He's not only become, but now he is acting. So now he can navigate all the paths, perils, and make sure that he's going to arrive at the destination. This is what letter 31 does. It takes us on this journey of seeing, being, and then finally doing. So while I go over this journey with you all, I'd like to also draw upon a very famous story in the Quran. I like to do this so that we get proper application of these three concepts, and we can see how a very particular group mentioned in the Quran demonstrated their spiritual seeing, their spiritual being, and their spiritual doing. And in this way, we will get an idea of how these concepts can be applied in lived experience. That story is the story of Ashabul Kahf. And we see in the Quran, a whole chapter, chapter 18, is named after this story, Surah Al-Kahf. And these people, the amazing thing, and one of the reasons why I decided to use this story as illustrative of these three concepts, is because they weren't prophets, they weren't scholars. They were just a group of believers who found themselves on this dark path without any light. Then they got some light, so they saw. Then they became. Then they did. Then they were never the same again. We'll see how that transpires as we go through this letter. So part one, the seeing part, when the lamp is lit. In this wonderful letter, Amir al-Mu'mineen tells initially his son, but of course, like I mentioned, this advice is for all Muslims, that you were created for the hereafter, not for this world. You are in a temporary dwelling. This is the seeing aspect. He's illuminating the path. What is our ultimate aim? What is our objectives? What are we here for? I'll give you an example. A person checks in to a hotel room. He's only going to be there for a day or so. So he checks in. Now, when he gets to that room, he has a good look around. And he sees that, okay, I don't really like the pictures on the wall. He goes out and buys pictures, right? And he puts them on the wall. Then the furniture, he doesn't like it. So he starts ordering furniture. He has a word with the guest next door about the colors of the curtains. What's happening here? Instead of occupying the room is occupying him. He's only supposed to be there for one night, to rest, to have some breakfast perhaps the next morning, then go to the conference, the meeting or whatever he came for. He's turned the aim the other way around. The room becomes the aim. And he is totally preoccupied by this. Now, Amir al-Mu'mineen says that it's like that. If you take this world to be your destination, it's like that person who goes to that hotel room and thinks that they're going to be there for such a long time that they give all their time and energy and wealth and effort in improving their stay in that time. They've missed the point totally. You are not created for this world. You are created for the hereafter. He's now explaining the path and enlightening it for that traveler. But, of course, he doesn't just say things. He demonstrated in practice everything that he preached. Everything that he writes in this letter, he showed us in practice. I'll give you an example. So, once when he was about to go to Jamal, Abdullah ibn Abbas comes to him and he sees Amir al-Mu'mineen sitting with his sandal in his hand. You know what he's doing? He's actually stitching his own sandal. Now remember, context, right? Context, he is the caliph. He is in charge of thousands and thousands. He is the ruler of the ummah. He has control over the treasury. He has this the status of being Amir al-Mu'mineen. Yet, he is found mending his own sandal. How many leaders like that do you know? So then he asks Ibn Abbas that, how much value do you give to this sandal? Ibn Abbas says, well, it has no value. It's just a broken old sandal, right? How does he reply? He says to him, this sandal would have more value in my eyes were it not for the fact that by ruling over you, I am able to defend a truth and to repel a falsehood. It would have more value than ruling over you if it wasn't for that, in order to make something happen that Allah is pleased with, in order to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore we see in this very simple example of him living the instruction of not using and not seeing this world as our final abode. In another part of Nahjul Balagha, Sermon 165, he says that gaze with the eye of your heart at paradise and your soul would recoil from the marvels of this world. Now, notice the wording here. He doesn't despise the world. He says marvels of this world. It means the world does have beauty. It does have so much going for it. There are so many good things about the world. The dunya is not all bad. Some aspects of it, become bad, depending on how human beings react with it and deal with others and so on. But he talks about the marvels of this world. What he's saying here is that there is something greater. in comparison with what you should be aiming for, you will not find any comparison. You will recoil from this world and its marvels. And in fact, one of the things that we find whenever we read the Nahjul Balagha is that it is so aligned with the Quran, right? It is totally aligned with it. Every time we look at Nahjul Balagha, we can find corresponding verses that support exactly what has been said. And this is the case here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-A'la, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, بَلْ تُؤْثِرُونَ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَى. That the person actually has a distorted view. The distortion is the fact that the person prefers the life of this world while the hereafter is better and more lasting. This distortion comes in because the person is preferring something temporary, something inferior. Now, remember I said that we're going to use the story of Ashabul Kahf to demonstrate all of these concepts that Amir al-Mu'mineen is talking about in this letter 31. The first instance is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes him in this very simple line, Surah Al-Kahf, verse number 13. إِنَّهُمْ فِتْيَةٌ آمَنُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ وَزِدْنَاهُمْ هُدًى. They were noble young men who believed in their Lord, and we increased them in guidance. Now, what is happening here? The lamp has been lit. They know their path. They believed in their Lord. At that time of darkness, context once again, at that time, it was a society of idol worshippers. There was a tyrannical king who was persecuting those who didn't hold the same beliefs as him. And therefore, they had to take up a stance. It was a path of darkness, but the lamp is lit. Look at the first part in particular. إِنَّهُمْ فِتْيَةٌ آمَنُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ. Their belief is that light. Now, when they carried on believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and demonstrating their firm faith, remember I said earlier, when somebody goes down that path, that light becomes stronger, it becomes brighter. So this is exactly what's happening in the second part of this verse. وَزِدْنَاهُمْ هُدًى. That light is becoming stronger and stronger and stronger. And then, of course, comes the second step, which is that light becomes part of them. They become the light. It's no longer external, it becomes internal. So this brings us on to part 2. Being the light within. This is when that light becomes rooted in a person. He's followed the guidance so much, he can see properly that now that light has become rooted, firmly placed within his soul. And he is able to illuminate the path in front of him and the path for others. He becomes the lamp. So here, Amir al-Mu'mineen, again turning to the letter, he says that I counsel you, my dear son, to have taqwa and to hold fast to his command. This is really the heart of his whole counsel, taqwa. Because now it's all about being. It's that internal trait. It's no longer a flash that he sees in the dark. Or for a second, he sees something. No, remember that path is totally illuminated for him. Not only that, but he has become the lamp. And so taqwa is the heart of the counsel that he gives. Taqwa is that state that safeguards someone from everything that takes that person away from God. Not only that, but then taqwa also directs that person in everything he does, in all his choices, in all his intentions. And so now, let's have a look at how Amir al-Mu'mineen again doesn't just say it, doesn't just write it in the letter. He demonstrates it. For this, I'll turn to the sermon of the God-weary. Khutbatul Muttaqeen, Khutbatul Hamam, as it's known, because The questioner was someone called Hammam. Hammam comes up to Amir al-Mu'mineen and he asks him that describe for me the qualities of the God conscious, the God wary, the muttaqeen, right? Those who have taqwa, as though I can see them. Amir al-Mu'mineen initially just gives him a simple answer. He's not satisfied with that. He persists. He wants the full description. Then Imam Ali alayhi salam starts describing 110 characteristics of those who have taqwa. At the end, that Hammam, he gives out a single cry and he dies. His heart could not take the description of the muttaqeen. I was thinking about this. How is it possible somebody dies when they hear something profound, right? Well, we are always told that speak from the heart. If you speak from the heart, it settles in someone's heart, right? I think this is what happened here. Amir al-Mu'mineen was speaking so sincerely, so eloquently, so profoundly from his heart, because he was not just describing external people, he was describing himself. And that sat in the heart of Hammam, and his heart could no longer take it. I believe in this, that yeah, it is possible. When you have the embodiment of taqwa, explaining what taqwa is in such a profound way, it can lead to the death of someone who's receptive enough to hear it. So then, when we look at these qualities, one of them is this. One of them is that when the muttaqi pass a verse of longing, they reach for it. When they pass a verse of warning, they can almost hear the fire. Allahu Akbar. This is something I thought, let me bring this part of the 110 qualities, because it's something practical we can all go away with today. Right? So a practical takeaway, that when we read the Quran, we shouldn't just read it fast and then move on as soon as we can. Take our time, slowly. When we get to a verse that talks about Allah's mercy, pause. Reflect over it. In fact, position ourselves in that scene. Let's say it's about, for example, in Surah Shura, right? Fariqun fil Jannah. Wow, okay? I could easily move on. The verse says, there's a party in Jannah. I stop, I pause. I long for it. I reach for it. I pray to Allah, oh Allah, give me this Jannah. And that will incentivize me to then strive for it more. But then the verse goes on to say, وَفَرِيقٌ فِي السَّعِيرِ. There's a party in the blaze, in the fire. When they pass a verse of warning, they can almost hear the fire. Here, again, I use my imagination, I place myself there, in the fire, being punished, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness, to keep me away from the fire. This is what Amir al-Mu'mineen is telling us, how to interact very practically with the Quran, so that we actually live it. We don't just read it, we make it a book of our guidance. And therefore, this actually, when I looked into it, is it's described by psychologists as, they have a term for it. They call it dual coding, right? Dual coding is when you gain much, much more, because you are combining two things. You are combining words and images, right? Dual coding is when you do that. You visualize, you combine the two, and that meaning becomes much more personalized, much more impactful and meaningful for you. But Amir al-Mu'mineen is not just using the words and the images. It's not just that. He says, make it part of your emotions. That's another step. And then a final step is that make it transformative for your soul. So he brings in not just words of the Quran. He's saying, don't just read the words. Don't just visualize the scene, the place of mercy, the place of punishment, but also attach it to your emotions, and then make it transformative for your soul. And therefore, this is how he advises us in this letter with regards to the being part. Now, this is what we must do then, inshallah, if we're not doing it already. Slowly, reading the Quran slowly, with the heart awake, leaning towards its hope, trembling at its warning. What about Ashabul Kahf? How did they embody the being part of this letter? Well, look at the verses. وَرَبَطْنَا عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ إِذْ قَامُوا فَقَالُوا رَبُّنَا رَبُّ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Because they had that light, and Allah increased their light, now, and we bound their hearts firm. Allah has made that light part of them. They are the lamp now. When they rose up and said, our Lord is the Lord of the heavens and the earth. So now that seeing has hardened into something solid inside them. It has taken root. So now it brings us to the third and final part. They saw spiritually. They were spiritual. How was that now manifested in their actions? Because we cannot just remain at that point. It's very good. But we have to demonstrate all of this taqwa, the inner light in our actions, in righteous conduct. So now, this brings me to the third and final part, which is doing. Walking the road with your own light, with that light from within. Now, it becomes relatively easy because it's part of you. And that taqwa will safeguard you from everything that takes you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But what I did here, because the letter is quite long, like I said, it's the second longest letter in the Nahj, I didn't look at those parts that talk about doing this and doing that, like actually actively doing something. I looked at a part that talks about restraint, not doing. Sometimes for us, not doing something is better and greater in reward and in the eyes of Allah than actually doing. Restraint is so difficult. We shouldn't think that restraint and avoiding and moving away is not amal. Amal, we think action, right? And we must do salah. We must, for example, help others. We must give charity, etc., right? Yeah, that's all necessary and excellent. But how about the other side, the restraint side? Look what he says in this letter about restraint. The courage to hold back. Why is restraint so valuable? Restraint, doesn't it require utmost effort? That's valuable in the eyes of Allah. Doesn't it require intention, sincere intention? Doesn't it require commitment? All of these things are very valuable in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, what does he tell his son and us all in this letter about this? He says that restraint is so important. He talks about not speaking about things you don't know. This is not doing. Don't speak about things you don't know. Secondly, don't interfere in matters over which you have no responsibility. How many times do we see this happening? People speaking about what they don't know, interfering in matters that don't concern them. And thirdly, don't go down the route that will lead you astray, because restraint at the moment of confusion is better than plunging into danger. Keep control, right? That's part of taqwa. Taqwa is not always about doing. It's about sometimes not doing. There's a temptation there. There's a worldly thing there that is not connected to Allah. I need to avoid it and refrain from it. But now, again, he doesn't just say it, doesn't just write it, he shows us. Of course, this example that he shows us, this restraint, is very well known. It's the example of when he fought Amr ibn Abdi Wud in the Battle of Khandaq. Okay, everybody knows it. But look at it in inshallah, with this type of insight. He defeated Amr ibn Abd Wud, right, the chief warrior of the disbelievers in the Battle of the Trench. And then when he was about to finish him off, he's on his chest. All he has to do is the final deed, and that's it, done. He's seen to get up. He's seen to walk away. And then to come back and then finish off Amr ibn Abd Wud. When he goes back to the camp, they ask him, "Oh, Amir al-Mu'mineen, we saw that you could have killed him right then. Why did you get up, walk away, then come back and then kill him?" He says, "Well, when I was on his chest, he spat at my face. When he did that, it made me very angry. And I didn't want to kill him out of my anger." Restraint. Not doing. When it's so tempting, it's right there. It's so easy. Restraint. Then he says that I then came back, sat on him and killed him because I wanted it to be an act purely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now, let's have a look at how the Ashabul Kahf put this final piece into practice. وَإِذِ اعْتَزَلْتُمُوهُمْ وَمَا يَعْبُدُونَ إِلَّا اللَّهَ فَأْوُوا إِلَى الْكَهْفِ. And when you have withdrawn, right? They've got that light they're seeing, they've got that inner being, the lamp. Now is action, isn't it? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells them, withdraw. Why? Because they were in that very dangerous society, dark society of idol worshippers, with that tyrannical king. They could not change the situation. Sometimes we're in that position where we can't change it. And so we have to withdraw. And then, so when you're withdrawn from them and what they worship besides God, take refuge in the cave. So a couple of questions for all my dear brothers and sisters and children. That, okay, how does this work? What part of your city must you turn away from? Here, the city in this Ashabul Kahf story is all those things that are keeping us away from God, and they are slowly taking away our iman. They are making us weak. They had to refrain from interaction in that society. So what is our city? They had to go. Our city, it could be a whole load of things. Pressures, it could be attachments, it could be certain relationships, it could be certain ambitions, it could be worldly things that don't have any connection with us getting closer to Allah. It could be spending all of our time scrolling. Right? Scrolling, wasting our time. It could be anything. Whatever is your city, no need to tell me what your city is. You know what your city is. I know what mine is. But then secondly, where is your cave? Ashabul Kahf is such an important story because it's full of symbolism. The cave is also our refuge. What is your cave? Now, of course, this is a gathering of mu'mineen. So we'll have caves, right? We'll have caves. We'll have our salah. We'll have our Quran. We'll have our Ahlebait alayhi salam. We'll have the other acts of worship. We'll have our du'as and ziyarat. Alhamdulillah. Are they your caves? Very good. So now what? Strengthen your caves. Go deeper in your caves. Because you still got at least one city, perhaps cities. And therefore, you need to follow in the example of Ashabul Kahf as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had instructed them, and as Amir al-Mu'mineen tells us in this letter. So then, what happens in the end? Of course, the story goes full circle, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts a veil of sleep over them. They sleep for about 309 years. They think it's just a day. Allah turns them left, right. People don't realize that they're actually sleeping. Then one of them goes into the marketplace, thinking that it's just the next day. He has with him the coins that he had way back, 309 years ago. He tries to spend it. then it becomes apparent that this was a miracle. This happened 309 years ago. And therefore it becomes a sign. Sign of what? A sign of Allah's power, right? To resurrect and to keep people like that. And also a sign of the resurrection itself. The resurrection itself. So really, they've come around full circle. Remember I said they saw, they were, and they did. And then they became something that they weren't before. Now, it's a new realization. The tyrant has gone. There are believers now in society. Everything has changed. They are now seeing with a new light. So the journey has become full circle. And so, to end with, what is the reward of us who follow the example that Amir al-Mu'mineen has described so well in this work of Nahjul Balagha? In the Quran we are told, the first part, up to the word fiha, for me, is easier to understand. The second part, I find it very difficult to understand. Lahum ma yasha'una fiha. So, those believers, right, if they fulfill all of these things, if they have that seeing, being, and doing, they shall have whatever they desire therein, right? Therein meaning in Jannah. Okay, we started with Jannah, we're going to finish with Jannah, right, hereafter. Whatever they wish. So, think about all the wishes you have. What do you want? What do you want? In Jannah, you got it. Think about something else. What do you want? You want that? You got it. Because whatever you want, you get it. Right? That's Jannah. That's how it is. That's our promise. The second part is very difficult. I don't get it. I don't get it. وَلَدَيْنَا مَزِيدٌ. And with us is more. How does that work? There's only one explanation. That is Allah's grace. That is Allah's favor. That is not dependent on my deeds. My deeds don't deserve all of that. This is Allah's mazid. He gives us even more. You know all those things that we all wanted, we wished for, we got them, right? Still Allah gives us more. وَلَدَيْنَا mazid. Now, it all depends, of course, what we want to wish for, right? What we think about. Sometimes an astronomer will wish to find a planet that's never been discovered, and hopefully be named after him. A poet might think that, oh, I wish I could write some poetry that will echo through the ages. But if I don't have any interest in astronomy or in poetry, will I think of those things? No. I'll think about whatever interests me, whatever I'm engaged in, isn't it? In this world, wherever I'm engaged, that's what I want. So when I go to Jannah, I will wish for things at my level. But isn't that telling us something? Our aspirations need to be higher. Our aspirations need to be higher because there are things that we will get if we wish for them. If we wish, oh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give me a house, He'll give me a house. Wow, big deal. Should my aspiration be higher? If I'm seeing correctly, it will be higher. I'll end with this final point. Look how Hakim Ilahi Kumshay, this great scholar who died in the 70s, wished for. Look what he wished for. Look at his aspiration. His aspiration wasn't just an ordinary thing here and there. His aspiration was to sit beside the fountain of Kawthar and recite Nahjul Balagha in the presence of Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah wa salamu alayhi. Whatever you wish for, you get. It depends on your aspiration. What have I used my world for? Have I really thought that I have been created for this world? Well, if I have, then I might wish for a nice car or a nice house and this and that relating to what I've been engaged with. But if my life has been in the service of Nahjul Balagha, like the lives of so many of the organizers here, mashallah, if my life has been in the service of the Quran, in the service of the Ahlebait alayhimussalam, what I wish for will be higher. وَلَدَيْنَا مَزِيدٌ. And on top of that, Allah out of His grace and mercy and favor, inshallah, will give us even more. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the tawfiq to see, be, and do as Amir al-Mu'mineen saw, was, and did. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad wa Ajal Farja. Now we are moving to the last part of our session. We're going to have one brief poetry session followed by a lecture from Sayyid Sheikh Ali Imran. Now I would like to invite a very special poet, our guest, Dr. Ramiz Naqvi, who specially traveled here for this session. Dr. Ramiz Naqvi is known as at Poetry by Ramiz. He has been writing poetry on Ahlebait al-Islam in the journey of faith since the age of 13. Beginning in local gatherings and community events, he developed a voice rooted in devotion, contemplation, and performance. His work has been evolved into a deeply reflective craft, weaving a metaphor, history, language, and structure to explore meaning and spiritual discovery through poetry. Dr. Ramiz completed his medicine degree from UCL and practices as a doctor, as well as refining his craft as a poet. Please welcome Dr. Ramiz with our salam.
My dear scholars, my dear elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. I want to just begin by saying a big thank you to the Peaceborough community for such a warm welcome and for a very kind invitation to such an amazing, inspirational event. As the dear brother mentioned, my name is Ramiz, originally from the Essex community. I've been asked to write a few words on the literary prowess of Imam Ali alayhi salam in honor of today's event. And when given such a task, I think it's incumbent upon all of us as writers and listeners that we are the ones benefiting from the process of creation. We are the ones benefiting, not our audiences. To spend a few moments reflecting upon the true meaning of being an artist of the Ahlebait alayhim salam and the true meaning of being a poet of Ali. In this piece, I try to essentially share the reasons as to why no words can do justice to Imam Ali. I also reference a few historical literary milestones, such as how under Imam Ali's leadership, the Arabic diacritics were added to ensure that the words of the Holy Quran do not be mixed up. Without the fatha, kasra, dhamma, the word deen, meaning religion, could be mispronounced as dain, meaning debt, and the meaning of the verses could change entirely. This idea then later developed to incorporate the dots that we see in the Holy Quran, which now separates the letters tha from ta, da from sad. Non-Arabs can now pronounce letters correctly without knowledge of the Arabic language. So this piece later references those additions and the additions of diacritics to the Arabic language. But I start with the idea of how I and how we strive to one day be able to call ourselves poets of Ali. With a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. To be a poet of Ali's, a visitor to the fountain of your praise and to drip only drops into its bowl. Through mismatched metaphors and slanted similes, ill-chosen letters or words, oh, to be a poet of Ali's. Writing beside lines exclaiming that he whose heart burns not with the love of Ali, such a heart is like an abode void of light, and beside inscriptions on domes, doors and frame, every surface becomes a canvas for his name. To dip in ink, for he who ink overflows, ink itself begging just to be a stroke, a sign, a dot, to be a part of your prose, so readily onto paper imparted. Seeping through its fibers, seeping through hearts, calligraphic, pristine are the lines that by him are finished, and blessed are those words from the lines that he starts. To be a poet of Ali's, to prescribe salvation through speaking of his praise, to the man that hears the stories of Khaybar in verse, melodic mumblings and mentions of Ali as the first, let these blessings be felt, pulsating through hearts and burning through bone. For time cannot hold me hostage. For time cannot hold me hostage. Canvas is abundant, every wall, every stone, and just as the corner of the Kaaba bears a crack of calligraphy, broken by his birth, and with his first cry sown, for language is my only limit. For language is my only limit, for if I could value without verbs, know names without nouns, if I could admire without adjectives and the above, if I could leave all language alone and laud with but lost letters and love, I would find myself amidst the library of your lovers, writing with quills that need no ink. Without these words that act but as veils, distorting what we think, sitting mute, but with a deep vibration of chords that all agree, like the beating of chests that beat in synchrony, with both the hands that wipe or wash or prepare carefree, all hearts will be beating, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali. Every beat an oath that lives but remains unwritten. I will ask my pen to write his praise, but the pen itself stutters. For words fail, Ali. Be that from a shyness of my request, or perhaps from respect. So odd to use words to describe speech that's above beings but below gods. For words will always fail, Ali. Words, letters, all fall at his doorstep, enough to disturb, disappoint, but not enter his door. For what letters? I ask, for what letters can talk to the man who gave Sheen its crown? The son of Noon, the shade of Tha, and Jim its womb, the very dot that itself balances the boat of Ba upon its shoulders. The man was the dot itself. And just like the boat of Islam is balanced, so fine, so free, the boat only sails straight upon the back of Ali. But I ask, but I say, some would say that he was not one. So would he be 2 dots below? So would he be 2 dots below? You would yearn that yesterday he had not yielded. And would he be 3 dots below? The alibi that the non-Arabs knew not the Prophet's prayer or Prophet's air, and would there be 4 dots below? None could explain or examine, no language or letter, for the dot is one. Ali is one who claims no better. For diacritics to be mistaken is forgivable. For diacritics to be mistaken is forgivable. For dots to be miscounted is forgivable. Yet Ali knew that if they were to mistake a consonant for another, if they were capable to switch religion for debt, indeed they could replace religion with the destruction of debts and desire and deviousness, and they tried to take it all, for they tried to take all they could. But you may take his titles. You may take his titles, yet the honor remains rigid. You may take his positions and dress yourself in his cloth. You may take his land, but give him a mound of mud to stand upon. And just as the world stopped upon settled sand, the world will still call out his name. And just as when Muhammad raised his hand upon a height, as if he was himself elevating Ali to heavenly ascension, saying that your hand is above all of those watching. And he who should hold this hand with love and delight, you shall join the language of the lovers. You shall join the language of the lovers, and if you scowl at the name that leads you to light, words of damnation will drag you to your grave. For upon this peak they stood as leaders. For upon this peak they stood as leaders and as friends. And the peak of eloquence rose. He who the peak of elegance had chose. So when this hand interlocked with the palms of Muhammad, a pact was made and a will was written. Writing that this day shan't be forgotten amongst days of celebration and days of glee, for today was a day the world should know to follow the path of Ali. So the Son of Faith held the hand of the radiant moon. The Son of Faith held the hand of the radiant moon as Musa was to Harun, yet the people will split as the seas. Words for him and against both heard in the breeze. So we write, recite, read, so that we may soon meet upon this fountain of his praise. Sitting without pen, without voice, at the end of his gaze, hoping that he will find the drop I had added and be pleased. Hoping that he will find the drop I had added and still be pleased, for speech will surrender, language will be lesser, but I still crave to one day be a poet of Ali's. Thank you very much.
It's so encouraging to see our youth writing such beautiful prose, such beautiful poetry. Jazakallah. Please recite a loud salawat for the Sayyid Salam to your Ramis Naqvi. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad ajal farjahu. Brothers and sisters, our last presenter today, our last speaker today, Sheikh Sayyid Ali Imran, specially traveled from Canada to be here with us for this session. Sheikh, we are really thankful and honored by your presence. For those who do not know, Sheikh Sayyid Ali is an educator, Hausa graduate, and community leader focused on tarbiyah, identity, and cultivating a confident Shia Muslim presence in the West. He studied in Qom for 10 years, completed postgraduate Islamic studies at the Islamic College London, and holds a master's in education from the University of Toronto. He taught advanced Kharij in Usul and Fiqh, and now serves as head of Al-Hadi School in Toronto while teaching at Mufid Seminary. It is my honor to invite Sheikh Sayyid Ali to address us on the topic mental health and emotional well-being through the lens of Nahjul Balagha. Please welcome Sheikh with our salawat.
Before I begin, just a quick correction. I did not teach Masal Kharij. That's what I heard. I think I attended Masal Kharij, so that's a pretty big blunder. In case anybody has any doubts, I'm about to do some ijtihad or something here. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Assalamu alaikum, dear scholars, dear guests, brothers and sisters, children. Assalamu alaikum. Inshallah, keeping in mind the time and maybe the exhaustion for some of you, the topic that I've been given the honor to present is mental health, well-being through the lens of Nahjul Balagha. It was a daunting task to be asked to present on Nahjul Balagha. I'm remembering one of my teachers in the Hawza who would begin every single class with the saying of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam from the Nahjul Balagha. And today I feel that I'm seeing the benefits of those classes that I would attend. And today I was told that Maulana Alevi has been teaching for almost 2 decades. And I get requested as well in my community, Sayyid Ali, please start Nahjul Balagha. And I always tell them that it's a very difficult book to teach. And even just the Arabic itself is very difficult to decipher. And both Sheikh Ismail and Maulana Ali Raza mentioned that Ibn Abil Hadid, the Mu'tazili scholar, he says that the kalam of Amir al-Mu'mineen is above the kalam of Bashar, but under the kalam of Allah. But there's also something else he says in the commentary of sermon number 91, where Amir al-Mu'mineen describes the angels. And Ibn Abil Hadid says, my pen is breaking looking at the description that Imam Ali alayhi salam has mentioned regarding the angels. And he says, how could the Sahaba describe the angels in such an eloquent way? And then he says, even if the Sahaba could write the prose and basically elaborate themselves in the meter and the rhyme and the prose in which Amir al-Mu'mineen has done so in this khutbah, where will they get the knowledge to fill those containers and the meters and the prose that Amir al-Mu'mineen has? So it's a lose-lose battle to try to go up against the Nahjul Balagha and the words of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So before I begin, obviously mental health is a sensitive topic. I'm not here to talk about actual, medical conditions that anybody may have that pertain to, mental health. This is a general discussion regarding well-being, psychological well-being, and because of my role as a principal at the school, this is something that we deal with all the time in schools. Just to kind of start off with a story, I joined our school in Toronto about 5 years ago. It's an Islamic school. And we had some kids joining in from public schools. And I'm talking about year 6, year 7, year 5. And these kids did not know the times table, okay? And I know all you UK people are like freaking out, what kind of kids do you have in Canada? 15 years ago, the Liberal Party had won the elections in Ontario. And they got rid of the multiplication times table from the Ontario curriculum in the elementary schools, from the younger age. So these kids who had gone through year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, when they were joining our schools, they didn't know the times table. And the reason for that was because the Liberals had added something called SEL, Social Emotional Learning, in the math curriculum. And they said that children are experiencing a lot of anxiety and nervousness when they learn the times table. So their solution, hey, let's just get rid of it, okay? And that's the Western modern way of dealing with challenges, that, hey, I have a feeling, I have this anxiety, and you must validate my experiences, and you better come up with a solution, right? A sort of a defeatist solution, because I'm going through this feeling, and you better accept it. You better be careful, of calling me out, or calling me weak, or calling me poor, or calling me, quite frankly, illiterate. So they got rid of that, and they replaced it with SEL. So my point here is that there's this whole idea of emotional well-being, but if it is not looked at correctly, or if it is looked at from the way that the modern world expects you to look at, you're going to have a lot of problems. Okay, you will never find a solution. So what you find today in our world isn't it such an amazing and astonishing thing that if I ask all of you, have the conveniences of our lives, have they improved in the last century, or have they gotten worse? Just the mere conveniences. Travel, I just came yesterday and I'm flying out tomorrow. And I'm not missing, just maybe one day of work. I have not missed any day. This travel would have taken me months, right, to do. So the conveniences of communication, of traveling, of everything, of our jobs, of our, our jobs that we do, of medical, doctor, decided the poetry, I thought it was a PhD doctor, but mashallah, he's a doctor, right? So, the way that surgeries are done, all of these things are much more convenient. So how is it that psychological issues and mental health issues have increased when the conveniences of life have improved? So it shows that there's a big problem in the way that the world is observing and analyzing, their experiences. So instead, what we find is people burnt out. Oh, Sayyid Maulana, 9 to 5, I'm at work. Yeah, even that's a convenience. People used to travel for months to do business. Even that 9 to 5, in some sense, is a sort of a convenience. Yeah, but I'm burnt out. I'm stressed out. I can't balance. I can't manage my finances, my family, my kids, my spouse. All of these things are creating a lot of issues in our communities, in our personal lives, in our family lives, with our relationships with our friends, community, and children. So we notice that, the modern life is full of stress. And it's all to do with the mind, right? Financial pressures, illness, loss. For example, how do we deal with loss? How do we navigate loss? Uncertainty, doubts. One of the biggest reasons for, mental not well-being is the doubts that we live in. We can't be sure about anything, as the modern world tells us. That there's no certainty. The default assumption is doubt. We don't know anything, right? And then relationship conflicts. So why is it that if my grandmother or my grandfather or my ancestors, they lived in a village on the outskirts of Rawalpindi, for example, and I've visited some of those, whatever remnants are left, and I look at their lifestyle. I'm like, wait, they did not even have plumbing for washrooms. They would have to walk to the fields to use the washrooms. Why is it that they did not collapse under such extreme circumstances? Sometimes read about the Ulema of Najaf in the last 100 years, and sometimes, as we mentioned context many times, we sometimes forget many of these Maraji were living under World War I, World War II. There were wars and battles happening, inside their country. The Iraqi governments were involved with the British and so on, yet they produced some of their most magnificent works during these periods. So sometimes we forget that these ulama were living these tough lives. Okay, so how come they didn't collapse, but we collapse, so easily? Well, I have work to do, and I can't manage it. Okay, so inshallah we're going to try and analyze some of this. Now I have all the Arabic of all of the quotations. I'll see if I need to quote something, but otherwise I'll stick to the English for now, for today's presentation. Look, Amir al-Mu'mineen in Nahjul Balagha highlights some overarching reasons for why you may be feeling a sort of unease with yourselves. Okay, so there will be some overarching reasons, and then there will be specific examples that I will also mention and I'll cite. So number one is the fact that, we are not understanding that this world is a world of temporariness. Okay? Because look, the modern human does not want to accept that fact. Because for the modern world, for the modern insan, who's not a mu'min, it is very, very scary to come to the realization that once you die, that's it. You will cease to exist. And because we grow up in the West, we are subconsciously trained to also think like that. We go to schools, we go through our education systems. The language by which we are learning and growing, there's no mention of akhirah, there's no mention of that this world is temporary, none of it. So at a subconscious level, we are also trained to look at the world and to analyze the world and to calculate the impact of our decisions in the same way. Okay? Whereas Amir al-Mu'mineen is saying that, look, in this dunya, you are the target of calamities. It's going to come. This is the world of tension. In Alamul Madda, in the material world, it is in the very nature of the material world that there will be conflict and there will be tensions. Okay, so at the very least, we should be sure that there's going to be no utopia in this world. Okay? Even in the time of the 12th Imam, Ajallallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, there will be no utopia, guys. There will be justice. Justice will be administered, but there will be crime, there will be people making mistakes and so on. Okay, so we understand that. The second thing that is a repetitive theme in the Nahjul Balagha is the attachment to the dunya. Right? Sometimes you see certain topics pop up a lot more in the times of certain Aimah. With Amir al-Mu'mineen, the dunya is a big theme. You don't find that much emphasis like that in later ahadith. It's because the Imam was ruling as a Khalifa, and the majority of the issues that were happening around his companions, around his friends, were all dunya related. Okay? Money, khilafat, power, war, Baitul Mal, the wealth that is coming into the Muslim lands because of the futuhat that are happening. People are after the dunya. These Talha and Zubayr that were referenced today, these were some of the earliest companions of the Holy Prophet. From a young age they were with the Prophet. They had scars on their bodies from the battles of Uhud and Khandaq and later battles. In fact, they used these scars to convince people in Jamal. They said, look, we have scars with the Holy Prophet. But what shook them? Dunya. At the end of their lives. Right? So that's another thing. And the third point, as I mentioned, that the tension and the pressures are inseparable from the dunya itself. So let's first correct our mindset, as Amir al-Mu'mineen says. This world is Darul Bala. Okay, that's the very definition. This world is a world of trial and tribulations and calamities. Okay, so if I understand that, if I know that this is how it's going to be, okay, so now when issues will come in my life, when challenges will come in my life, I will deal with them and I will look at them and I will interpret them very differently. Okay, so that's kind of obvious now. So let's look at a couple of specific examples he mentions throughout the Nahjul Balagha. Right? What are some reasons people have emotional breakdowns, psychological breakdowns? Many reasons. For example, poverty. There's a lot of references to orphans and widows, people who are poor, illnesses, physical illnesses. Okay, and these are reasons why people could be feeling uneasy, that there's no well-being in their lives because they're poor, for example, or they're feeling a sense of humiliation in the society because of their status. Second thing, one example he mentions is the separation from the family. This is very beautiful. Okay, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min wa'tha'is safar. Oh Allah, I seek protection from you from the hardships of the journey and from the grief of returning and from the scenes of devastation of property of men. Okay, so separation from the family. He says, oh Allah, you are my companion during my journey when I'm away from my family. So he's acknowledging that separation from family will create a little bit of unease. For months people would travel, right? Months people would travel. You wouldn't even know if your spouse is alive. You would figure out sometimes many years later. Okay, number 3, and this one, the Imam speaks from his heart. He says another thing that creates issues and stress is the disloyalty of friends. Okay, disloyalty of friends. I mean, I don't know if I need to explain that any further, but the most painful, we just did a play on Julius Caesar in school. And and Brutus says, Caesar says, "E tu, Brute," you too, Brutus. And I explained to the kids, I said, look, this is the most painful line that Julius Caesar says because he did not expect it from his friend. The rest of the people he expected from them, that he will get stabbed. But when his friend comes, the disloyalty that his friend shows, that creates the most uneasiness in him. Okay, so disloyalty of friends, losing a supporter, losing a protector, and this is specifically, he mentions this when he talks and complains to the Holy Prophet about the loss of his wife, Lady Fatima, salamullah alayha. Loss of a loved one. He says, oh Prophet, this was an amana that you had entrusted me with her, and I have returned her back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But he talks about the pain that he's feeling at the loss of a loved one, okay, and a protector. So these are some misdaq, some examples that Amir al-Mu'mineen says about things that can create, in people's lives, challenges and so on. Okay, so that's good enough. So now what do I do with it? Different psychologists will, look, what do psychologists generally do? They apply frameworks, okay? They have certain frameworks by which they will have, conversations with the patient, for example, to get them to think in a certain way. That's the name of the game, okay? To get them to think in a certain way. And of course, now if you are a believer, a mu'min, you have a certain worldview, then you will think in a different way, okay? As opposed to somebody who does not believe in the akhirah, masalan, does not believe in any accountability, then you will think in a different way. It's kind of obvious. Now, one of the frameworks that is used is sort of like a 2-3 step process. And this can increase the level of stress or can decrease it depending on how you go through these steps. Number 1 is every individual, whenever you encounter a conflict or a challenge or a tension, you evaluate the environment and the situation. Okay, first you figure out what has even happened. Did I just lose someone in my family? Did I lose my job? Did I lose a family member? Look at the children and people in Gaza, masalan, or other countries, Iran, getting bombed. Like, what is happening exactly? Right? What's the situation that I am in? And then you judge, is this a harmful event? Is it a beneficial event? Is it a irrelevant event? That's the first stage. The second stage is, and this is the important part, because look, the event itself is not the thing that's going to cause the stress. Okay, the event itself doesn't cause the stress. It's the second stage where you see, okay, this event has happened. What are the resources that I have at my disposal? And what is the knowledge level that I have at my disposal? by which I will interact with this event. What is the relationship between me and this event? Okay, so I work, let's say at school, some of you are probably in corporate work jobs. Let's say a really big crisis happens at work. The person who is very experienced, they will look at an event and they will say, okay, I've seen this dozens of times, okay? If a doctor sees a patient coming in with, needs some very serious surgery, the family will be stressing out. The doctor will be like, okay, this is the 50th patient I've done this surgery on, for example. So they evaluate their relationship with that event. And then the third stage is they appraise it. Okay, so either they're going to say, oh man, I cannot deal with this. I do not have the resources, or I do not have the knowledge, and that will create a level of stress. I mean, it should. Okay, hopefully it does, because that level of stress itself is sometimes very good. Like, something is wrong, you need to go find a solution for it. Okay, or you might say, no, alhamdulillah, I've dealt with this many times, I've seen this situation many times. These are the resources I have with me, and I will deal with it, for example, in X and Y way, for example. So these are the 3 steps. Now, how does Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam guide us to the same steps? He says, the biggest problem is that man asbaha ladunya hazinan faqad asbaha liqada'i Allahi sakhita. He says, he condemns those individuals who see an event and they analyze the event and they look at their resources in relationship to the event on a surface level. Okay? And this is the problem all of us have. He says, hey, when you are saddened by an event, when something has happened, and you become angry at it, many of us, something happens, we get angry. He says, it is as if you are angry with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're angry with the decree, and if you complain about it, it is as if you are complaining against God, na'udhu billah. It is as if you are complaining against God. He's basically telling us, stop looking at events at a sathi level, at a surface level. Brothers and sisters, it just takes a moment of reflection on our own lives to realize how many events have happened in our lives which we initially thought were bad, negative. Sometimes years later, we realize, subhanallah, alhamdulillah, that negative, what I thought was negative, alhamdulillah, that happened, and it got me to this stage where I am right now in life. So many. But because we do not reflect, and the Quran repeatedly says to be people of reflection, we forget, we become ghafil, we become heedless. And what do? A new event happens, same old style, okay, evaluating things from a surface level. Okay, well that's going to create your stress, of course. It's going to ruin your night, it's going to ruin your sleep. Okay, so what does he say instead? He says, no, have a deeper interpretation of the events that you are experiencing. Now, I have to say that there is no way to do this except by raising your own bar higher. Okay? You cannot do it without increasing your knowledge and ma'arifah. In fact, from the Islamic paradigm, the worldview, your value in the Quran, obviously it says taqwa. But even taqwa, how are you supposed to increase it? Through ilm. As some of the hukama, philosophers say, your value is basically judged on your knowledge, your ilm. In fact, if you are not gaining knowledge, you're just like the cattle and the animals, but Allah worse than them. So I have this event happening, negative event. Okay, somebody has passed away, I have become an orphan or something, very, very dangerous event. And I start complaining. Okay, so I'm looking at the world as just this event has happened and now my life is done. Okay, but if I change my interpretation, that okay, this was a world of calamities, this type of thing is to be expected, that Allah can test me in a certain way, or Allah may have a good wisdom in this specific event in me, maybe through this tension and maybe through this difficulty I will improve. How else are you supposed to improve? If there's no difficulty in your life, how can you go to the next level? This is basic, rule of life. You cannot increase your strength Unless you lift heavier weights, you cannot increase your spirituality unless you increase the difficulty of the spiritual ibadah that you're acting in. This is very basic. So in fact, sometimes or many times you need that difficulty to get you higher. And the Quran also says that Allah is testing you to see who is better, who has more taqwa, who is, pure, for example, who's going to get more purified. So the Imam says, "Inna dunya daru sidqin liman sadaqaha." That the dunya actually is the abode of truth. The things that are happening are the haqq. Acknowledge them and try to understand them beyond just, oh, why did Allah do this to me? That's our default response. And I mean, maybe somebody can look into the historical dimension of this and see maybe this has become exaggerated in the modern world more so, because there is no concept of God in our societies. So it's an easy thing to blame, right? Oh, just blame it on God. That Imam said, this world is the abode of truth for those who are truthful with it. If you are living in delusion, then it will be a problem for you. But if you are truthful with it, it will be the abode of truth. And it is a dwelling. وَدَارُ عَافِيَةٍ. Afiyah is one of the words used for mental health, well-being, by the way, in Arabic. Afiyah is one of the words. وَدَارُ عَافِيَةٍ لِمَنْ فَهِمَ عَنْهَا. It is a place of well-being for those who understand it. So what does that require from us? A higher level of understanding? And I always mention, this could be, I hope it is not my bias, that it is a point of truth, that we have to shift our communities from what I call tabligh-based communities, which have been the trend for the last few decades, to tadris-based communities. And mashallah, now many cities and many ulama are doing this, right? They have the time and resources to move towards tadris-based communities. And those communities where tadris is the asal, where the level of the people is higher, you can see a difference. But if the asal is tabligh-based and tadris is just a side thing, okay, then over there in those communities you can see there's a lot of issues, a lot of problems. You will observe around the world. Okay? Now, inshallah, if I were to conclude, what are some strategies that are there in Nahjul Balagha? Now, brothers and sisters, there's so many. So instead what I decided to do is to categorize them, because these are found all over different khutbahs, short statements, and even some of the letters. So I decided to categorize them into 4, strategies that he says. So I'll mention them quickly and I'll break down some of them. Number 1 is, meaning and perspective. How do you interpret the world? Everything is a game of interpretation. I teach English literacy as well. That's how we start the class. Boys and girls, everything is an interpretation of the world. Everything has meaning. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the world with meaning. Everything has a meaning. That's why he says, these are ayat for those who think. So I'm supposed to look at a star, and the star means something. It's an ayah, it's a sign. It's dalalat, that's what dalalat in Hausa. So that means it means something. So everything has a meaning. Second is going to be community support. This is extremely important, especially nowadays for our youngsters, right? With the elders, your level of support that you all needed was quite different than the type of support that the youngsters today need, especially in the Western world, because they are getting more and more alienated from who they truly are. Just a few days ago, one of the boys in our class, he says, "Brother Ali, I'm Canadian." I said, "Okay, what does that mean?" He's like, I'm like, "Are you like white?" He's like, "No, I'm Pakistani." So, "Okay, so you're Pakistani?" He said, "No, I'm born here." So I said, "Okay, so everyone born here is Canadian? Some people are born here, they're not Canadian." Confused. At the end, he reduced it down to maple syrup. He said, maple syrup. I said, okay, so I said, brother, it's just a construct. It's a construct. So actually, I said, I realized he doesn't know who he is. That's majority of the kids, brothers and sisters. So they're alienated. So what do they need? They need a very strong, solid community network. Yaqeen Institute, one of the famous institutes in the Sunni world in the US, did a research about reasons why people and the youth are leaving Islam. One of the biggest factor was lack of community support. One of the biggest reasons. So this is important. This is all afiyah, this is well-being. Kids getting depressed, people getting anxiety, they can't answer questions. Amir al-Mu'mineen will address this in some of his khutbahs. Number 3 is your amal, action. Right? And what we mean by action is sort of having these multi-dimensional approaches. So I'll quote one of them. For example, we mentioned the smile, and it's very good. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen also mentions this, that the joy of a believer is apparent on their face, while the sorrow remains hidden in the heart. Right? And the idea here is that, he says in another similar statement, that sometimes when you show this happiness, or show this joy, or show this patience, it will transform you into the patient person. It will be able to transform you. And the last one is prayer and spirituality. وَادْفَعُوا أَمْوَاجَ الْبَلَاءِ بِالدُّعَاءِ. Okay, repel the calamities with the dua. Unfortunately, even this culture is not very prevalent amongst the youth. I said something in our community that the only time we get together as a community for dua is Laylatul Qadr, maybe Dua Arafah, maybe Amar Dawood. For those of you who are able to do Amar Dawood, but there's Amar for every month. Dhul Hijjah, Dhul Qa'dah, Rajab, there's Amar. Why don't we gather on all of those nights? Why is Laylatul Qadr? Actually, we have to develop a culture. We don't have this culture, so only time we have the himmat to stay up for Amal is just Laylatul Qadr, but the whole Mafati is full of Amal nights, so we should make an effort. So supplication and prayer. I'll just quote, maybe one or two, because I don't want to go through all of them, but I want to just focus on the first one, because for me it's the most important one, our interpretation. That Amir al-Mu'mineen says, O people, fear Allah during times of ease, just as you fear Him during times of hardship and calamity. And we have multiple narrations, even from other Allama alayhimus salam, that obviously we only go to Allah when we are in hardship. When we are in ease, we forget about Him. He says, no, go to Him even when you're at ease. Meaning, look at the world from the lens of His rahmah, His mercy. And I think one of the best examples of this is the statement of Lady Zainab Salamullah alayha, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, in the court of Ibn Ziyad, where he says to her, look at what Allah has done to you and your brother. And we all know this. She says, Ma ra'aytu illa jamila. Now, of course, ulama have done commentaries on this, but at a very simple level, it is an interpretation that she's giving. And the enemies are interpreting the event from a different lens. And look at how and she's the daughter, obviously, of Amir al-Mu'mineen, alayhi salam. So look at how she interprets the whole event, the whole battle of Karbala. She has seen everything, all of the things we're saying. It's pain and misery and hardship and calamity. She should be in depression. No, she said it was beautiful. I mean, this is a very high level for us, but at least, I'm trying to say that it's not just statements of Amir al-Mu'mineen. These are the practical examples in his lineage, in his progeny, that we can look up to. So there's that. There's sabr. Sabr is very important in our tradition to sort of regulate your emotional well-being. Patience is very key. Sometimes letting go of things. An event has happened, somebody had a fight with me, we never let go. And I think mostly amongst the elders, this is a problem sometimes. Purane fights, 30 saal, 40 saal pehle hue mein, kids are like, Mama, Baba, bas kare, leave it. But you notice that, it eats the heart. Because 40 years later, you're still like, yes, us tumhare falan uncle ne meri zameen di thi or something. Kids are like, mate, I don't know, I didn't get nothing from that zameen, but my point is that if you hold grudges, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, look, let go of things. Move on. Life is too short for you to worry about, what happened. And then finally, I'll give one more example. I mentioned the social network. One final one. So Sheikh Ismail mentioned something on the slide that do not go into things with confusion. Go with certainty. This is 100% correct. So sort of in that context, Amir al-Mu'mineen also says that sometimes when you have a difficult situation in front of you, throw yourself into it. But I want to just sort of contextualize it by saying not when there's confusion or any harm, but a simple example would be, you have to give a speech. so much anxiety and nervousness and stress before the day of the speech, for example. But after you give it, after you throw yourself into it, you give it, you're like, okay, that wasn't too bad. I'll do it again. That's what he means here. That, hey, sometimes you have a challenging situation, your emotional well-being is not regulated. You know what? Sometimes just put yourself in the deep end, as they say, put yourself in the deep end. When you come out successful from it, you will realize, wow, I've gained a level, I've developed my resilience, and inshallah, you will do it again, you will do it even better. So, that's all I wanted to share. I know time is up, and I've covered a lot. I hope the main gist of my speech from the Nahjul Balagha on emotional well-being, mental health, inshallah, I hope it was beneficial. These are quite common issues in our communities, and we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to relieve all of us from these type of miseries and anxieties, inshallah, and give us all afiyah. بحق أمير المؤمنين عليه السلام.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Once again, on behalf of the whole Peterborough community, we extend our thanks and gratitude to Sheikh, who specially traveled from Canada to share his knowledge and insights with us. Please recite aloud salawat for the Sayyid Salamati of Sheikh Imran. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa al-Jir Farajaw. Well, alhamdulillah, we have reached the conclusion of today's conference. After the ziyarah, inshallah, we will be serving full dinner, what we call in our language full niyaz. We request all brothers and sisters do join us for niyaz, inshallah. And now I would like to invite Maulana Hussain Saab for a token of thanks and closing remarks. Please welcome Maulana Saab with a salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين وهو خير المعين. Before I thanks all, I will say sorry to all of you that we are a little bit behind our schedule. So because this has happened sometime. For thanks, I will start. Thanks Allah that who gave all of us this tawfiq that we are busy in talking about seeing of His tongue. This is the thanks of Allah, and you know that about whom we are talking. Rasulullah, he says that Aliyun lisanullah. So we are talking about tongue of Allah. So thanks for Allah that He gave us this opportunity. So this is the thanks. Now this is a long list, especially I will say to speakers that thank you for your time. Our poets, these teams, these youth are sitting from a long time here. Ladies, they came. And especially those brothers from a few days, they are busy in this conference. So thanks you all of them. Second point is that for after a break, we done this Nahjul Balagha conference. Before this, we done in Marriott Hotel and very high-level speakers. But alhamdulillah, our three speakers, they explain about Nahjul Balagha very beautifully. Now we have our own hall, and this is the beauty of Peterborough today, that all Shia communities are here. And we are counting, and we wrote here that this is the Islamic Thought and Hussaini Islamic Center and Imam Raza Center and Al-Mahdi Center. But lots of you don't know that we have a representative of a Bora community, alhamdulillah, also. So this is not a 4, these are 5 communities here. All Shia communities are attend this. So last thing is that what I want, that this is my request, and this is not my request, this is a wish of Imam Ali alayhi salam. If you recite and read seeing number 147 of Imam Ali alayhi salam, many times in front of Kumail, Imam alayhi salam point out toward his chest with his hand, Ha huna la ilman jamma. There is treasury of knowledge which don't come to end. Then these 2 points from sisters, from daughters, and all of you, that we must join together and complete the wish of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Because Imam alayhi salam said, Ha huna la ilman jamma, then Imam alayhi salam said that I haven't found those they can take and they can deliver. I found some of them, they are not trustworthy. Amin nahi hai ya zahin nahi hai. Some of them are not intelligent, some of them are not trustworthy. So please try, as the future and past we done, and now today we are doing, and inshallah all these 5 communities will travel together in future and read and write and talk about saying of Imam Ali alayhi salam. Only one point we wrote here, I will say, I don't have a time that I read this, read and make a picture and write this, that Imam Ali alayhi salam says that we are master of words, or we are master of speaking. This is sermon 230, and one sentence we wrote here, that be good just as you would have others be good to you. So this is the message of Nahjul Balagha, and hopefully if we 2 sentences we take with us, we can change not our life, we can change our community life. So thank you very much for all of you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.